Chapter 2. Concentration, its practice. Verse 1. Mortification, study, and surrendering fruits of work to God are called Kriya Yoga. Those samadhis with which we ended our last chapter are very difficult to attain, so we must take them up slowly. The first step, the preliminary step, is called Kriya Yoga. Literally, this means work, working towards yoga. The organs are the horses, the mind is the rein, the intellect is the charioteer, the soul is the rider, and the body is the chariot. The master of the household, the king, the self of man, is sitting in this chariot. If the horses are very strong and do not obey the rein, if the charioteer, the intellect, does not know how to control the horses, then the chariot will come to grief. But if the organs, the horses, are well controlled, and if the rein, the mind, is well held in the hands of the charioteer, the intellect, the chariot reaches the goal. What is meant, therefore, by this mortification? Holding the rein firmly while guiding the body and the organs, not letting them do anything they like, but keeping them both under proper control. Study. What is meant by study in this case? No study of novels or storybooks, but study of those works which teach the liberation of the soul. Then again, this study does not mean controversial studies at all. The yogi is supposed to have finished his period of controversy. He has had enough of that and has become satisfied. He only studies to intensify his convictions. Vada and Siddhanta, these are the two sorts of scriptural knowledge. Vada, the argumentative, and Siddhanta, the decisive. When a man is entirely ignorant, he takes up the first of these, the argumentative fighting and reasoning pro and con, and when he has finished that, he takes up the Siddhanta, the decisive, arriving at a conclusion. Simply arriving at this conclusion will not do. It must be intensified. Books are infinite in number, and time is short. Therefore, the secret of knowledge is to take what is essential. Take that and try to live up to it. There is an old Indian legend that if you place a cup of milk and water before a Rajahamsa, a swan, he will take all the milk and leave the water. In that way, we should take what is of value in knowledge and leave the dross. Intellectual gymnastics are necessary at first. We must not go blindly into anything. The yogi has passed the argumentative stage and has come to a conclusion, which is, like the rocks, immovable. The only thing he now seeks to do is to intensify that conclusion. Do not argue, he says. If one forces arguments upon you, be silent. Do not answer any argument, but go away calmly, because arguments only disturb the mind. The only thing necessary is to train the intellect. What is the use of disturbing it for nothing? The intellect is but a weak instrument and can give us only knowledge limited by the senses. The yogi wants to go beyond the senses. Therefore, intellect is of no use to him. He is certain of this, and, therefore, is silent and does not argue. Every argument throws his mind out of balance, creates a disturbance in the citta, and a disturbance is a drawback. Argumentations and searchings of the reason are only by the way. There are much higher things beyond them. The whole of life is not for schoolboy fights and debating societies. Surrendering the fruits of work to God is to take to ourselves neither credit nor blame, but to give up both to the Lord and be at peace. Verse 2. It is for the practice of samadhi and minimizing the pain-bearing obstructions. Most of us make our minds like spoiled children, allowing them to do whatever they want. Therefore, it is necessary that Kriya Yoga should be constantly practiced in order to gain control of the mind and bring it into subjection. The obstructions to yoga arise from lack of control and cause us pain. They can only be removed by denying the mind and holding it in check through the means of Kriya Yoga. Verse 3. The pain-bearing obstructions are ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life. These are the 5 pains, the 5-fold tie that binds us down, of which ignorance is the cause, and the other 4 its effects. It is the only cause of all our misery. What else can make us miserable? The nature of the soul is eternal bliss. What can make it sorrowful except ignorance, hallucination, delusion? All pain of the soul is simply delusion. Verse 4. Ignorance is the productive field of all these that follow, whether they are dormant, attenuated, overpowered, or expanded. Ignorance is the cause of egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life. These impressions exist in different states. They're sometimes dormant. You often hear the expression, innocent as a baby, yet in the baby may be the state of a demon or of a god, which will come out by degrees. In the yogi, these impressions, the samskaras left by past actions, are attenuated, that is, exist in a very fine state, and he can control them and not allow them to become manifest. Overpowered means that sometimes one set of impressions is held down for a while by those that are stronger, but they come out when that repressing cause is removed. The last state is the expanded, when the samskaras, having helpful surroundings, attain to a great activity, either as good or evil. Verse 5. Ignorance is taking the non-eternal, the impure, the painful, and the non-self for the eternal, the pure, the happy, and the Atman or self, respectively. All the different sorts of impressions have one source, ignorance. We have first to learn what ignorance is. All of us think, I am the body, and not the self, the pure, the effulgent, the ever blissful, and that is ignorance. We think of man and see man as body. This is the great delusion. Verse 6. Egoism is the identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. The seer is really the self, the pure one, the ever-holy, the infinite, the immortal. This is the self of man. And what are the instruments? The chitta or mind stuff, the buddhi or determinative faculty, the manas or mind, and the indriyas or sense organs. These are the instruments for him to see the external world, and the identification of the self with the instruments is what is called the ignorance of egoism. We say, I am the mind, I am thought, I am angry, or I am happy. How can we be angry, and how can we hate? We should identify ourselves with the self that cannot change. If it is unchangeable, how can it be one moment happy and one moment unhappy? It is formless, infinite, omnipresent. What can change it? It is beyond all law. What can affect it? Nothing in the universe can produce an effect on it. Yet, through ignorance, we identify ourselves with the mind stuff and think we feel pleasure or pain. Verse 7. Attachment is that which dwells on pleasure. We find pleasure in certain things, and the mind, like a current, flows towards them. And this following the pleasure center, as it were, is what is called attachment. We are never attached where we do not find pleasure. We find pleasure in very queer things sometimes, but the principle remains. Wherever we find pleasure, there we are attached. Verse 8. Aversion is that which dwells on pain. That which gives us pain, we immediately seek to get away from. Verse 9. Flowing through its own nature and established even in the learned is the clinging to life. This clinging to life you see manifested in every animal. Upon it, many attempts have been made to build the theory of a future life, because men are so fond of life that they desire a future life also. Of course, it goes without saying that this argument is without much value, but the most curious part of it is that in Western countries, the idea that this clinging to life indicates a possibility of future life applies only to men, but does not include animals. In India, this clinging to life has been one of the arguments to prove past experience and existence. For instance, if it be true that all our knowledge has come from experience, then it is sure that that which we never experienced we cannot imagine or understand. As soon as chickens are hatched, they begin to pick up food. Many times it has been seen where ducks have been hatched by hens that as soon as they come out of the eggs, they flew to water, and the mother thought they would be drowned. If experience be the only source of knowledge, where did these chickens learn to pick up food, or the ducklings that the water was their natural element? If you say it is instinct, it means nothing. It is simply giving a word, but is no explanation. What is this instinct? We have many instincts in ourselves. For instance, most of you ladies play the piano, and remember when you first learned how carefully you had to put your fingers on the black and the white keys, one after the other, but now, after long years of practice, you can talk with your friends while your fingers play mechanically. It has become instinct. So with every work we do. By practice, it becomes instinct. It becomes automatic. But so far as we know, all the cases which we now regard as automatic are degenerated reason. In the language of the yogi, instinct is involved reason. Discrimination becomes involved and gets to be automatic samskaras. Therefore, it is perfectly logical to think that all we call instinct in this world is simply involved reason. As reason cannot come without experience, all instinct is, therefore, the result of past experience. Chickens feared the hawk, and ducklings loved the water. These are both the results of past experience. Then the question is whether that experience belongs to a particular soul or to the body simply, whether this experience which comes to the duck is the duck's forefather's experience or the duck's own experience. Modern scientific men hold that it belongs to the body, but the yogis hold that it is the experience of the mind, transmitted through the body. This is called the theory of reincarnation. We have seen that all our knowledge, whether we call it perception or reason or instinct, must come through that one channel called experience, and all that we now call instinct is the result of past experience degenerated into instinct, and that instinct regenerates into reason again. So on throughout the universe, and upon this has been built one of the chief arguments for reincarnation in India. The recurring experiences of various spheres in course of time produce this clinging to life. That is why the child is instinctively afraid, because the past experience of pain is there in it. Even in the most learned men who know that this body will go and who say, "Never mind, we've had hundreds of bodies, the soul cannot die," even in them, with all their intellectual convictions, we still find this clinging on to life. Why is this clinging to life? We have seen that it has become instinctive. In the psychological language of the yogis, it has become a samskara. The samskaras, fine and hidden, are sleeping in the chitta. All this past experience of death, all that which we call instinct, is experience become subconscious. It lives in the chitta and is not inactive, but is working underneath. The chitta vrittis, the mind waves, which are gross, we can appreciate and feel. They can be more easily controlled. But what about the finer instincts? How can they be controlled? When I am angry, my whole mind becomes a huge wave of anger. I feel it, see it, handle it, can easily manipulate it, can fight with it, but I shall not succeed perfectly in the fight until I can get down below to its causes. A man says something very harsh to me, and I begin to feel that I'm getting heated. And he goes on till I'm perfectly angry and forget myself, identify myself with anger. When he first began to abuse me, I thought, I am going to be angry. Anger was one thing, and I was another. But when I became angry, I was anger. These feelings have to be controlled in the germ, the root, in their fine forms, before even we have become conscious that they are acting on us. With the vast majority of mankind, the fine states of these passions are not even known, the states in which they emerge from subconsciousness. When a bubble is rising from the bottom of the lake, we do not see it, nor even when it is nearly come to the surface. It is only when it bursts and makes a ripple that we know it is there. We shall only be successful in grappling with the waves when we can get hold of them in their fine causes, and until you can get hold of them and subdue them before they become gross, there is no hope of conquering any passion perfectly. To control our passions, we have to control them at their very roots. Then alone shall we be able to burn out their very seeds. As fried seeds thrown into the ground will never come up, so these passions will never arise. Verse 10. The fine samskaras are to be conquered by resolving them into their causal state. Samskaras are the subtle impressions that manifest themselves into gross forms later on. How are these fine samskaras to be controlled? By resolving the effect into its cause. When the chitta, which is an effect, is resolved into its cause, asmita or egoism, then only the fine impressions die along with it. Meditation cannot destroy these. Verse 11. By meditation, their gross modifications are to be rejected. Meditation is one of the great means of controlling the rising of these waves. By meditation, you can make the mind subdue these waves And if you go on practicing meditation for days and months and years, until it has become a habit, until it will come in spite of yourself, anger and hatred will be controlled and checked. Verse 12. The receptacle of works has its root in these pain-bearing obstructions, and their experience is in this visible life, or in the unseen life. By the receptacle of works is meant the sum total of samskaras, or impressions. Whatever work we do, the mind is thrown into a wave, and after the work is finished, we think the wave is gone. No, it has only become fine, but it is still there. When we try to remember the work, it comes up again and becomes a wave. So it was there. If not, there would not have been memory. Thus, every action, every thought, good or bad, just goes down and becomes fine, and is there stored up. Both happy and unhappy thoughts are called pain-bearing obstructions because according to the yogis, they, in the long run, bring pain. All happiness which comes from the senses will eventually bring pain. All enjoyment will make us thirst for more, and that brings pain as its result. There is no limit to man's desires. He goes on desiring, and when he comes to a point where desire cannot be fulfilled, the result is pain. Therefore, the yogis regard the sum total of the impressions, good or evil, as pain-bearing obstructions. They obstruct the way to freedom of the soul. It is the same with the samskaras, the fine roots of all our works. They are the causes which will again bring effects, either in this life or in the lives to come. In exceptional cases, when these samskaras are very strong, they bear fruit quickly. Exceptional acts of wickedness or of goodness bring their fruits even in this life. The yogis hold that men who are able to acquire a tremendous power of good samskaras do not have to die, but even in this life can change their bodies into God bodies. There are several such cases mentioned by the yogis in their books. These men change the very material of their bodies. They rearrange the molecules in such fashion that they have no more sickness, and what we call death does not come to them. Why should not this be? The physiological meaning of food is assimilation of energy from the sun. The energy has reached the plant is eaten by an animal, and the animal by man. The science of it is that we take so much energy from the sun and make it part of ourselves. That being the case, why should there be only one way of assimilating energy? The plant's way is not the same as ours. The earth's process of assimilating energy differs from our own. But all assimilate energy in some form or other. The yogis say that they are able to assimilate energy by the power of the mind alone, that they can draw in as much of it as they desire without recourse to the ordinary methods. As a spider makes its web out of its own substance and becomes bound in it, and cannot go anywhere except along the lines of that web, so we have projected out of our own substance this network called the nerves, and we cannot work except through the channels of those nerves. The yogi says, we need not be bound by that. Similarly, we can send electricity to any part of the world, but we have to send it by means of wires. Nature can send a vast mass of electricity without any wires at all. Why cannot we do the same? We can send mental electricity. What we call mind is very much the same as electricity. It is clear that this nerve fluid has some amount of electricity because it is polarized and it answers all electrical directions. We can only send our electricity through these nerve channels. Why not send the mental electricity without this aid? The yogis say it is perfectly possible and practicable, and that when you can do that, you will work all over the universe. You will be able to work with any body, anywhere, without the help of the nervous system. When the soul is acting through these channels, we say a man is living, and when these cease to work, a man is said to be dead. But when a man is able to act either with or without these channels, birth and death will have no meaning for him. All the bodies in the universe are made up of tanmatras. Their difference lies in the arrangement of the latter. If you are the arranger, you can arrange a body in one way or another. Who makes up this body but you? Who eats the food? If another ate the food for you, you would not live long. Who makes the blood out of food? You, certainly. Who purifies the blood and sends it through the veins? You. We are the masters of the body, and we live in it. Only we have lost the knowledge of how to rejuvenate it. We have become automatic, degenerate. We have forgotten the process of arranging its molecules. So, what we do automatically has to be done knowingly. We are the masters, and we have to regulate that arrangement. And as soon as we can do that, we shall be able to rejuvenate just as we like, and then we shall have neither birth, nor disease, nor death.